All right, so we're going to start the second part of this chapter, and the two things that we're really going to talk about in this video are the importance of understanding culture, and then what is international sport business, kind of from a definition standpoint. So one of the most important things when we talk about international sports marketing and business is understanding the cultural differences. So many times, these are all rhetorical questions, obviously, because you're not here with me, but you have to essentially answer the question, how do we make decisions about sport? And oftentimes we make these decisions based on our social relationships. Again, the types of events we go to, the things we watch, oftentimes are dictated by our social surroundings. For example, me in college, I was not a big basketball fan going through high school. I played football and baseball, and I got to college and I had a roommate that was a avid NBA fan, and because of his avidity and fandom of the NBA, I began to watch a lot of NBA games and became a fan myself. And so, again, my social surroundings impact the types of sports I watched as well as the ones I went to. And that goes back to what we mentioned last video, is the social identity theory. And as a review, again, it's the second time we mentioned it, so it's probably important. Social identity theory is defined as individuals join groups in order to fulfill some sort of need of a personal identity, and they buy products and do things that fulfill that need for a personal identity. And being a member of certain types of groups can fulfill this identity. And so, for example, just look at the two logos that I put on the screen here, Callaway Golf and Penn Fishing Reels. Two completely different brands, obviously have different products, but I would venture to say something about the social identity of the person that uses those products. While you might have a person that uses both, and that's not unheard of, you would probably, in your mind, envision different people. Somebody who's Callaway Golf Clubs is probably somebody who likes golf, maybe watches it on television, wears golf apparel, goes to golfing events. Penn Fishing Reels, however, or whatever fishing reel you may use, is another identity that comes from it. So bass tournaments and owning boats and going fishing in general, offshore, or got the wording, but lakes essentially. The point is, all of it says something about your identity to the people that you're around. And as markers, we have to understand that. And so the first question we have to ask is, why is it so important to understand culture? Well, the reason is we have to first understand our own culture and our own experiences, which again create different types of belief systems and biases that come from that. As marketers, we have to understand it first so that we can then interact with other cultures. One of the biggest, and we'll talk about at the end of this semester, at the end of this chapter, that is what the NFL did wrong in not understanding culture when they went to Europe. In other words, their interactions with the culture there were not first taking a look at their own culture and how it might interact with others. And so we have to first understand our own culture and our own experiences so that we can interact with other cultures that may be different than ours. So talking about culture, one of the biggest cultures, when I've traveled the globe and talked to many different people in other countries, everybody goes, "Where are you from?" And I'll say the United States, and they'll go, "Where?" And I say Texas, and they go, "Well, you should have started with that." And sometimes I'll just say, "Well, where are you from?" "Well, I'm from Texas." In a lot of respects, Texas is, its own nation, so to speak. It's got that mentality. There's a culture that comes from it. And within this idea is this term, the Texas Triangle. You may have never heard of it before now, or you may have. But the Texas Triangle is basically what we call a mega region. A mega region is about, this one is about 60,000 square miles, and it ranges from the DFW area down to Houston and San Antonio and everything in between. And we are, while not in the Texas Triangle, right outside of the Texas Triangle. And I would venture to say that many of you, I would say the typical student at SFA, about 2/3 of the students at SFA are from the Texas Triangle. So it's really important to our culture here. And so the question you have to ask is essentially, do you believe that most students want to live in the Texas Triangle following graduation? The reason I ask that, and you need to ask yourself that, is many times students, especially those that want to work in the sport industry, go, "Well, I'm from East Texas. I want to live in East Texas the rest of my life, but I want to work for a professional sport team." Well, sorry to say, there's not very many professional sport teams in East Texas. Now, there's college athletics, sure. There's some collegiate baseball teams in Texarkana and Tyler, and some other arena football here and there. But for the most part, you're going to have to venture outside of it. And the same is true for the Texas Triangle. Many times people go, I want to work in professional baseball. Well, in the Texas Triangle, there's only 2 professional major league teams, and I would venture to say 1 minor league team. That's AAA Round Rock. So thinking outside of the Texas Triangle is important because there's a lot of jobs and opportunities out there for you to find. So one of the most common thoughts about the Texas Triangle is that we have to assume that there's really nothing international about it, right? Because we're Texas, we're our own nation. Well, the problem with this is that when we talk about international sport, and similar to other types of businesses, is that international sport transcends geographical boundaries. In other words, I can watch at any moment, at any time, a sporting event live across the globe. I mean, right now, it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon right here. I'm sure I can go find somebody playing some sport somewhere and be able to watch it live. And I'm in the Texas Triangle, so to speak. The whole point is we have to understand that while we may be from a certain region and we understand our culture, and while we may have, and we'll talk about it later, some nationalism, some pride in who we are and where we're from, understanding that culture and being open-minded, which we'll talk about later as well, is important to understanding these cultural differences. And so what I want you to do as one of your assignments for this part is I want you to identify an example of one international sport firm that affects business in Texas. So again, it can be a somebody who markets through sport, markets of sport, and why does this firm impact business in Texas? And I want you to give examples in your post. Now, this is a discussion post, so I want you to post it one time, and then also want you to answer the question, could you work for this firm in the United States? And then obviously, why then would you be studying international sport marketing help you perform your career for this company? So again, identify the firm. Why does it impact Texas business? Could you work for this firm in the United States? And why would studying international sports marketing help you perform your career, so to speak? So that's your post, and then I want you to reply to somebody else's. I want you to find another job that you may not have ever heard of and go, that's interesting. Kind of reply to them and maybe ask a question if they know something about it, or say, no, this is something I would be interested in. So 2 posts, 1 post and 1 reply. But anyway, moving on to the second part of this video, or this part of this video, is talking about international sport business. And what we're talking about here is essentially, the term that we use to basically study international sports marketing is international business. And it's oftentimes, and you can see it in your book, it's defined on page 3, consists of transactions that are devised and carried out across national borders to satisfy the objectives of the individuals or the organization. So in other words, it's trade across borders. And when we talk about international sport business, it's defined as sport organizations that develop trade relations across nations in an effort to meet organizational objectives. So very similar to the international business definition, but we're applying it to sport organizations. Within the discipline of international sport business is primarily what this class is about. While we do touch on several other things, and your book talks about several of these things, other disciplines are marketing, management, economics, finance, event management, so on and so forth. There's lots of things that you can do with international sport business. But the key to understanding international sport business is this idea of globalization. In Chapter 3, I believe we're actually going to talk more about globalization, but it's defined on page 4, and it refers to the converging of economies, trade practices around the world, driven particularly by technology. And so it includes the mobility of people, labor. So in sports, we're talking about athletes, knowledge, and oftentimes through media in sports, and technology across borders, and that's where we're seeing more advances in media and consumption of sport. Okay. One other thing we have to understand is that technology is really the reason why globalization is accelerating. We understand that this leads to regionalization or impacts regionalization. Regionalization is defined as the effort to protect resources, customs, and cultures through ignoring globalization. In the United States, we see a variety of influences that we have on other countries, as well as other countries have on us, and the cultures within those countries. Regionalization would be the opposite in trying to prevent outside influences to change the culture of our society. And so technology gives us the ability to change that, which is part of the reason why we see globalization. Okay. Another thing, here we go, sorry, slow down. So we have to ask the rhetorical question, so how does globalization apply to sport business and apply to sport marketing? Well, globalization applies because it gives sport firms the ability to and the opportunity to create and distribute innovative sport products and services. And when we talk about products, we're meaning goods and services. Another thing that global sports are oftentimes born out of cultural differences. Example is the popularity of the Olympics and the World Cup, these mega sporting events that have multiple cultures coming to play one sport or similar sports. So let's take the World Cup as an example. You may have two different teams that speak two different languages and an officiating crew, referees that speak a third language, but you're all still playing the game, and there is some things that you can rally around in that. Other questions you have to ask when it comes to international sport businesses: what are some examples of catalysts for sport globalization? What we mean by catalysts are those things that help advance. And so global broadcasting, internet, that would be broadband streaming, reaching niche or niche markets, and social media. These are all things that have helped us as sport organizations and leagues grow internationally. The other question is, why would a firm wish to develop domestic activities, products to a global level? One of the biggest things is market share, so profit, the increased commercialization and the acceptance of that internationally, desires for customers globally, because we have the ability to now communicate and transport our products at a higher level than we did 50 years ago. And then reaching niche markets, because if we have a small market that may reach across global borders, sometimes these are things we'd want to look at. So this is just kind of an overview of international sport business.